The streets of Earth's megacities no longer blinked with neon hope. They hummed, buzzed, and cracked with the noise of endless industry, poverty, and the quiet indifference of those rushing through their own survival. It was a world overrun with routine despair, a planet once proud of unity now fractured by its burdens. Amid the towering structures of steel and glass, in the shadowed alleyways between markets and transit depots, something unusual shivered under a dirty tattered cloth, something small, fragile, and entirely out of place. He was no taller than a human child, but his skin shimmered with a faint lavender hue, and his wide eyes blinked with vertical slits like a cat's, eyes that should have belonged to a creature running wild on some jungle moon, not begging on the edge of humanity's capital. No name, no guardian, no translation chip. Just a whisper of a sob and a bowl held out by shaky fingers that no one seemed willing to notice. The alien child didn't understand Earth's languages fully, but he understood hunger, pain, cold, and the cruel act of being invisible. Every day, he sat curled against the thermal vents near the station gates, catching only the briefest gusts of warmth from the crowds that surged past. And each night, when the city lights dimmed into artificial dusk, he clutched his knees and cried into the folds of his robe. He didn't even remember how he got here. Just fire, screams, a burning ship, and the moment his mother pushed him into a pod and said one last word he didn't know the meaning of. Hope. And then one day, everything changed. Sergeant Elias Grant, a former Earth Marine who had seen more battlefields than peace talks, stepped off the shuttle transport with the 1,000-yard stare of a man who had lost more than he could admit. The war with the Silent Consortium had ended, but the ghosts of his squad still walked behind him in silence. Elias didn't smile anymore. Didn't talk much either. He just walked to the same old corner bakery, ordered black coffee, and sat at the same cold bench to watch a world that no longer made sense to him. But this time, he saw the boy. At first, Elias thought it was some Earthborn child in costume. But then the soldier's eyes narrowed. He saw the bones pushing against that strange skin, the way the child's chest rose with the slow, shallow breath of someone too tired to cry anymore. And that bowl, held out not for coins but for food. A plea for help from a soul so small, so alien, that Earth's people had chosen to look away rather than understand. Elias didn't look away. He walked forward. The alien child flinched, expecting another kick, another push, another word he couldn't translate but always knew meant go away. But Elias didn't raise his hand. He didn't shout. He knelt. He knelt before the boy, armor scraping the pavement, eyes locking with the child's. The crowd around him kept walking, some glancing in curiosity, others frowning in disapproval. But Elias didn't care. He reached into his pack, pulled out a ration bar, military-grade nutrient-dense, and tore it open slowly, handing it forward. The child didn't move. He just stared. "It's okay," Elias said softly. "You're safe." The boy's hands trembled as he took it. He chewed slowly, as if expecting the food to vanish any second. But when he tasted it, his eyes welled with tears. Not just because he was fed, but because someone saw him. For the first time, someone chose to care. Elias stayed there a long time. He learned the boy's name, Tari, a sound barely whispered. He learned that Tari species were thought to be extinct after their planet was scorched during the final days of the war. A miscalculated bombardment. An unavoidable consequence, in a war report. But here one of them was, left behind alone, on a planet that didn't even know his kind still existed. Elias couldn't walk away. He took Tari with him, not as a pet, not as a refugee, but as someone who deserved more. He filed reports, fought bureaucracy, argued with alien relations officers, and burned every favor he had left to keep the boy from being taken into custody for processing. And then, he brought him home. A quiet farm outside city limits. A place with wind turbines, old soil, and a modest house built by Elias's grandfather. It was the only place that ever felt like peace. There, Tari learned how to speak Earth languages. How to tend the garden. How to read. And more importantly, how to feel safe. He followed Elias everywhere, mimicking his movements, his posture, even his frown. And slowly, Elias started to change too. The weight in his chest eased. The nightmares faded. He laughed again, for the first time in years. Really laughed, when Tari tripped over a chicken and landed in a bucket of rainwater. He taught the boy to cook, to build, to live. And at night, when stars spread across the sky, they'd sit on the porch and look up at the constellations. Two lost souls who had no one, finding a family in each other. But peace doesn't last forever. One day, a ship arrived, unmarked, sleek, and watching from orbit. Elias felt it in his bones, old soldier instincts. Something wasn't right. Within hours, black-suited officials from the Intergalactic Migration Authority landed on the farm. They said there had been a report. An illegal species. A breach of interstellar custody protocol.
They didn't ask. They demanded.
We'll be taking the subject, one officer said coldly. It's a danger. Elias stood in front of them, eyes burning with fury.
He's a child. He's not human.
Elias didn't move. Behind him, Tari clutched his sleeve, eyes wide with fear. The same fear Elias had seen in war zones, in refugee camps, in burning cities.
And just like then, he chose to fight.
What happened next was not a battle of weapons, but of truth. Elias pulled every file, every recording, every image.
He broadcast it. He told the story.
Of a boy starving on Earth, of a soldier who chose to kneel, of a world that had forgotten kindness. The story spread like wildfire. And something miraculous happened. People cared. Human families stepped forward. Alien sympathizers rallied. Even retired military officers gave statements. They said what needed to be said, that what makes us family is not blood, not species, but choice. In the end, the IMA backed down.
Tari stayed.
And as months passed, the boy grew strong.
Smarter. Kinder. Braver.
He called Elias father. And Elias, he called him son. Because sometimes, salvation doesn't come from heroes or wars. Sometimes, it comes from a soldier kneeling before a child, and offering not just food, but a future. Years passed since the day Elias knelt before the starving alien child in that ruined alleyway. Tari, once shivering and skeletal, had become a boy of radiant potential. Raised far from the cold corridors of war and the bureaucracies of the galactic superpowers, he grew up on Elias's modest farm on Earth's outer rim, surrounded by vast wheat fields, rusting old tractors, and a view of the stars untouched by the pollution of city lights. But the ghosts of the galaxy never stayed buried for long. While Earth had welcomed Tari quietly, cautiously, the wider galaxy began to stir. Hushed whispers spread across networks and black market hubs, rumors of a living Cylon child. The Cylons, thought to be extinct after the final war, were a race the galaxy had chosen to forget. Their erasure wasn't just a tragedy of war, but a calculated cover-up, a silent genocide cloaked beneath layers of forged treaties and digital redactions.
And now, one had survived.
Tari's presence became more than a curiosity. He became a liability to those who built empires on the lie of the Cylons' extinction. One cold morning, Elias spotted something strange. Drones high altitude and disguised as weather satellites, hovering just a bit too long over their land. That night, a probe tried to land, but Elias, ever the soldier, shot it down with the same precision that once earned him medals during the border rebellions.
They had no choice.
He packed their few belongings, loaded Tari into the back of a rusted transport, and they fled deeper into Earth's rural wilderness. But the seed had been planted. Tari was more than a survivor now, he was a symbol. As they lived in hiding, Tari's mind expanded beyond any human's expectations. He repaired Elias's outdated farming drones with tech he built from salvaged parts. He reprogrammed old satellites to scan deep space transmissions, searching for any trace of others like him. What he found chilled him: encrypted logs, corrupted transmissions, whispers of enslaved Cylons, used for medical experiments or sold for their genetic code in the distant Helix belt. Rage simmered in him, but Elias taught him to be patient, to be precise. Anger without strategy is a weapon turned inward, Elias would say, his voice firm but caring. And so Tari learned to wait. By his 15th Earth year, Tari was no longer hiding. Disguised as a human tech prodigy, he began releasing designs, revolutionary ones. Engines that required half the fuel. Medical scanners that detected diseases at the molecular level. Weapons that could neutralize drones without causing collateral damage. He released them for free. At first, humanity rejoiced. Then the galaxy took notice. Ambassadors from the Intergalactic Council requested meetings.
Tari declined.
Corporate syndicates offered fortunes.
He refused. He had a mission.
One day, unannounced, he appeared before the Galactic Truth Tribunal, an ancient but mostly ceremonial body meant to investigate war crimes and historical records. He arrived alone, wearing a simple gray robe, a hologram disc clutched in his hand. As the tribunal members laughed, ready to dismiss him, he activated the disc. What played next shocked every corner of the civilized galaxy. Footage from hidden archives.
Genetic proof.
Audio recordings from war generals detailing the final solution for the Cylons. Locations of slave colonies.
Names.
The tribunal chamber descended into chaos. Governments that denied knowledge were implicated. Empires that claimed neutrality were shown profiting from the silence. Tari didn't speak until the footage ended. Then, with calm strength, he said, "I am not here for vengeance. I am here for truth." And for those you forgot. Within days, revolutions began. Silence hidden in the shadows of asteroid prisons began to rise. Some worlds overthrew their local governors. Others called for accountability. Elias watched all of this from the farmhouse, pride burning in his aging chest. But he also knew it wasn't over. A coalition of warlords, fearing Tari's influence, launched a bounty, the largest in known history. They hired mercenaries, pirates, even rogue AI fleets. Tari's shuttle was attacked in orbit over Mars. He survived only because Elias, despite his years, had anticipated the strike. He had never stopped training. Never stopped watching. As the shuttle limped back to Earth, Elias stood waiting on the landing field, pulse rifle in hand.
I told you they'd come.
Now we show them why Earth doesn't kneel. What followed was a siege on Earth like none before. Ships blotted the sky. Cities went dark. But something happened the warlords hadn't anticipated. Humanity stood behind Tari. Veterans reactivated. Engineers sent drones into battle. Farmers like Elias turned irrigation networks into explosive traps. The people remembered who had knelt before the alien child, and now that child had become their hero. The war lasted 3 days. On the 4th, the sky cleared. The bounty coalition was shattered. Tari stood atop a pile of fallen armor and broken lies. He broadcasted one last message, not one of triumph but of unity.
I was hungry once.
I was scared. But one man, one human, changed that. Not with weapons, not with politics, but with a choice. To kneel, when others turned away. That choice changed everything. Now I ask you to choose. Stand together. Or fall divided. 10 years later, a new alliance stood at the center of the galaxy. The Human Silent Accord led initiatives in peace, exploration, and justice. Tari was appointed High Emissary. Elias, though retired and older, became a living legend. Children across worlds learned his story, the soldier who chose empathy. Monuments were built. One of them, the largest, was not of war or conquest. It was a sculpture of Elias kneeling before a small alien child, hand extended, palm open. And beneath it, the words etched in 100 languages, "In one man's mercy, a galaxy found its soul." Elias passed away not long after in his sleep, beneath Earth's quiet stars. Tari held his hand till the end. When asked how he wanted to honor his father's legacy, Tari replied, "By never forgetting what he saw in me before I saw it in myself." And so, the story of a helpless alien child and a human soldier who chose kindness ended not with a war, but with a rebirth, of hope, of unity, and of a future neither of them ever dared dream of in that ruined alleyway where it all began.